And welcome to the January 17th meeting of the Victoria Parks and Recreation Committee. I'd like to call this meeting to order. First, we'll do roll call, which is customary to announce everybody that's in attendance on the committee. So we'll start down to my right.
Amanda Cahill.
Greg McCurry.
Mary Larson.
Jeanette June.
Perfect. And Alyssa Swanson, I'm City Staff Interim Parks and Recreation Director.
Great, thank you. All right, next we have the approval of the minutes from the prior regular meeting, which would have been the December 18th, 2023 meeting. Were there any changes to the meeting minutes?
Well, I just had a question. I know it stated like pending future transportation plans. I didn't know if we needed to be like specific and call out like Arboretum area transportation plans for that area in our city.
I don't think we need to for the minutes. If that's what
Okay.
the committee would like to get more specific, we definitely can. But usually for our minutes, we try and keep them somewhat broad, but is specific enough. So
Okay.
that's up to you.
I was kind of thinking the same thing as you, Amanda, that it was specific to that particular highway expansion project.
Yeah.
So then I would say let's put that in the minutes, that it was specific to the Arboretum area.
Area transportation plan
Yeah.
specifications for that area of the city. Yeah. Okay.
So then for the motion, you could just say, I approve the committee meetings of that date as addressed and discussed, or with the changes as discussed.
Okay. I can do that.
Okay. Would you like to make-
So I move to approve the committee meeting minutes for December 18th, 2023, with the adjustment to specifically mention the Arboretum area transportation plan.
Okay, is there a second?
I second.
Okay, we have a motion by Amanda and a second by Jeanette. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, next is petitions, proclamations, suggestions, or complaints from citizens, committee members, or staff.
I do have some things from the public. So one thing we've been talking about recently is the public's want in our survey results for like access to water, or, you know, whether that be pools, splash pads, lakes. And then I just had another citizen mention, as it relates to that, is like a potential sauna at the rec center, because other community rec centers have, you know, a sauna or a steam room for people to do after their workouts. So I just thought I would mention that because it's been, you know, on our, you know, access to water things. And then, so for us to maybe bring it back to when we have a specific meeting that addresses those things as well. And then also, I got a request to find out, how does someone in the community ask about or to reserve Puppets Field specifically? So, and this came from Chanhassen Athletic Association parents, because I have connections there. So there's a field reservation system for the other Victoria fields. So like either at Lions or at Victoria Elementary, for instance. But they would really be interested in reserving Puppets Field specifically for a team. Even though it's a Chan Athletic Association, that's where all of our Victoria kids participate through. And so the team has a lot of Victoria boys on it.
Yeah, that's actually a great question. So for some background, Poppets Field is at Lions Park. It's a baseball diamond out there, and it includes a number of bleachers as well as dugouts for the baseball players. That is also our home of our Victoria Vics. It's our hometown baseball team, and through partnership with them, they have first priority and first come, first serve when it comes to that space. They also maintain the field for us, so when it comes to lining or mowing or anything else that comes to that field, they provide that service. And if there is communities that or associations that do want to work with them, they would have to directly contact the Victoria Vics to see if that's available for them to use. They have done in the past, they continue to do that with Holy Family. That's also their home field. So what Victoria Vics does is through a specific cost sharing agreement, Holy Family uses the space, and then Victoria Vics through volunteers maintains the space for them.
Great. Thank you. I have a couple other items. Go ahead. Okay. I know we've also been talking a lot about, what other land Victoria still has for our parks and our and things. And I noticed that there's land for sale right across the street from the rec center. So we don't know if, because it's just on the other side of 86th, if that is considered Chaska, so we wouldn't be able to potentially buy that and utilize it, considering it's right across the street from all the extra parking out there on those soccer fields.
That is the city of Chaska, so there would be a lot of issues with purchasing outside of city land or city limits, and there's not, if any, wiggle room on that. There's been documentation and an agreement set through orderly annexation since the 70s that pretty much lay out where city limits will be, and there's no wiggle room within that.
Okay. And then another thing is that we've been talking a lot about what can we offer in our park system for big kids. So not the tot lots, and or maybe they're not on the rec equipment anymore. And so one thing I wanted to bring that I have seen at all our district middle schools and at other community middle schools is called a Gaga Ball pit. It's spelled G-A-G-A. And it's a hexagon shaped outside structure. It kind of looks like hockey boards, but it's much, much smaller. Probably it could fit inside this space here, inside there. But these are outside our middle schools all year round. So wanted to bring it so that when we're planning potential parks in the future, maybe we could get some information to have on hand for a feature like that.
Committee members, if I might jump in, Amanda, you must be reading my email because I'm actually bringing forth a project related to a Gaga pit to us next month. There's a local Boy Scout who wants to become an Eagle Scout, and he would like to propose to you all, and he'll be coming to the meeting in February to propose his idea of bringing a Gaga pit within the city. So one of the questions we're going to ask you is this appropriate? And then location, because obviously this is something that we don't have in our city, so making sure we have enough parking, enough space for it, and does it really fit some areas. So we were looking, just potentially throwing it out there, is Rhapsody or somewhere like Lake Bridge is a great option for something like that. So that will be coming before us, and I will have plenty of research information related to Gaga pits, and I hope our Boy Scout member, we've talked to him about materials and bringing forward size and scope and kind of what he's looking to contribute versus what he wants the city's assistance with. But in addition to that, just talk more about Gaga and why it's important and why we're seeing such an uptick today. So
Great.
yeah.
Interesting. Anybody else?
I think that covers all
Thank you.
what I brought.
Okay, do we want to move on to 4.2?
Yes, we can. I just have a few things for you. Sitting at the dais, you'll see the public meeting calendar. I just wanted to get that on your plate. City Council formally adopted this at their annual organizational meeting in early January, so I just wanted to make sure that you all had this sitting in front of you. And then in addition, something that I'm going to consider and I wanted your feedback on is I can also send calendar invitations out for all of our committee meetings if that would be interest to the committee, just to help make sure that this is on there. I see one thumbs up. I see a
Yes.
nub. Okay, that's perfect. Then you'll see that come through shortly. Perfect. And then the other one is just some miscellaneous news events that are going on. So our Citizens Academy registration is open. Citizens or Victoria Academy is something we started about 3 years ago. I think it's our 4th year doing it, and it remains readily popular. It's a great way for community members just to really understand what local government is and what their city government does. So we take our students, in quotations, and bring them around many areas of our city. So it's our water treatment plant. They talk to our sheriff's office and our fire department about, public safety related things. They even meet with our finance department and talk about city budgeting, as well as parks and recreation, and a lot of variety events. So if you're interested, it's a great program. Registration is open and it's online, and it's about a 6-week course. We have like one night a week that we come and meet for an hour and a half, 2 hours, just to talk about all things local government. It's a great, adult educational program as well. So just wanted to throw that out there. And then the last one that I have is we do have an election coming up. March 5th is our presidential primary election, and we do manage our city elections here, and we are looking for election judges. So if you know of anyone, if you yourself would be interested in becoming an election judge, feel free to talk to me directly, or look online. We have a lot of information related to what election judging is, why is it important, and how do you apply. So with that, Chair, that is all I have for you this evening.
Thanks, Alyssa. So there is no old business for today, so we'll move right on to new business.
Awesome.
Take that away, Alyssa.
Perfect. So for our only new business item today is item 6.1, which is to review the sketch plat for Victoria South, which is a residential development. It's being proposed by Civic Site Group. And we do have the developer here today, so if you do have any specific questions or things that you want answered, they're here to hopefully answer some of those. And then I do want to note that this specific project is really unique and really important to Victoria. It's going to be the first development that will occur on Victoria's South Growth area. So it's going to start laying down the foundation to anything that's going to happen south of the railroad tracks. And just to give you kind of a quick idea of what I'm talking about or where I'm talking about, it's going to be this parcel, this triangle piece. It's about 24 acres highlighted in blue here. And this is new territory for Victoria. We've never crossed this boundary before. And it's designated for high density residential, and we'll see that in a bit, but anything below that is going to be for commercial space. So when we're looking at, making sure that we're fitting the feel of Victoria, we're bringing all the things that people love about the Victoria, connecting to the natural spaces, making sure we're preserving our open spaces, our wetlands, our forest areas, making sure that's continuing as we're growing, especially when it comes to parcels such as this and anything south, because this is really going to, again, lay the foundation for any work that's happening in our growth areas. So to go back, something I always like to start when it comes to sketch plat is just a reminder of what sketch plat is. So this is just a review process. We're just providing guidance here and some feedback to the applicant, to the developer, so that they can provide the best product for us and for them, and before they actually get to a formal application, such as a preliminary plat application. So they are obviously here to hear your thoughts as Parks and Recreation Committee members. Tonight, we're obviously going to be looking at our open spaces, our trails, our parks when it comes to this space. So we want your feedback at the table. And you're not the only ones that are going to be reviewing this project. The Planning Commission is also, well, they've already looked at it. They looked at it at their last meeting in January. And then the City Council is also going to look at it on Monday at their workshop on January 22nd. So there's going to be a lot of eyes on this, as well as any other sketch that comes to the table. So just make sure you're providing the feedback that you'd like to provide today. So going back to the location, again, this is a approximately 24 acre development that's going to be west of, where's my mouse here? West of Victoria Drive or County Road 11, directly south of the railroad tracks, and also directly south of the Marsh Hollow development. And then slightly north of this is the Hunters Brook development, just to give you kind of an idea of where we're looking. Highway 10 is on the south end here. It does not touch Highway 10, but just to kind of acclimate you. So unique to this project, again, This applicant has provided us with 2 layouts for this site. Both propose a 144-unit apartment complex, which you'll see in a moment, as well as exterior and interior parking for that, and about 120 to 135 rental townhomes, just depending on the options that we're going to be looking at. So again, this is a high-density residential space. This is a map from our 2040 comprehensive plan that guides future development when it comes to zoning and what it should look like in the future. So it is on par with our high-density residential zoning. And then anything below that, again, just to look at what the future is going to look of that space, is going to be commercial or flex employment areas. So getting into what is actually going to be proposed today, looking at option A, it again features that 144-unit apartment complex that's going to be anchored on the southeastern side of the site, where the rest of the development is going to have scattered rental townhomes. You are going to see a collector route that starts from Victoria Drive, County Road 11. That's going to loop down into the future commercial space once that gets developed. And then you're going to have 2 public roads kind of branch off here, which brings connection to the townhomes to the collector route. The other piece I want to point out here for you is there is a centrally located clubhouse that the applicant is proposing. Obviously, this is sketch plat, so we're just at reviewing here, and everything is still in the very preliminary stages, but proposing a pool, playground, fire pit, which could be used by the residents. The other pieces is when we're looking at the apartment complex, there is a dog park as well as a tot lot being proposed nearby that facility. The other piece before I get too ahead of my water skis here that I want to note is this future park that's located on the south side. This is what we call a more or less a ghost plat. This is not part of the development being proposed today. It's not owned by this developer, the applicant, the property owner, but it is a potential use of the area below it once that gets developed. We do know in talking to this property owner on the south side, when they're potentially developing, they do not anticipate a park going into this space. So just have that in the back of your mind that this park that is located here most likely will not happen. And how does that impact our conversations today? Obviously, we want to ensure that all of our residents have access to parks. So just knowing that when it comes to direct access to this park, that is not an option.
Because it's not real?
It is not real.
And it's not going to ever be real?
Not from what we anticipate in
Okay.
current conversation.
Can I ask a question too? Where it says future commercial, does the city already own this land?
We do not own this land, but a developer does own it that is planning on doing commercial and is guided commercial via our zoning. So it will be commercial.
Okay.
Great question.
And so where the future park is located, is that then commercial?
That is commercial
Zoning
as
as
well. And part of that is, part of the reason that won't be a future park is this wetland that is shown here and is also shown on other maps does not exist. So there's no reason to kind of separate that out into a park. It's perfect land for development. I also want to show the connectivity in this space. So there is a diverse trail and neighborhood connections scattered throughout this area. If we start from the east side and move west, we're going to see this blue thicker line. That resonates a regional trail, so connecting on Highway 11. Anything north, I shouldn't say anything north of this, the 2 developments north of this also have a sidewalk that's alongside 11, so it would be extending that past the railroad tracks through this development and eventually extending it through the south growth or the commercial area. Then looking at these yellow thicker lines, those are trail connections, so they would adhere to our stereotypical trail style, bituminous, about 6 to 8 feet. So those are scattered throughout the neighborhood. And then what is required for townhome developments is sidewalk along both sides of public streets. So that will be the smaller dotted red lines that you'll see as sidewalk that are scattered throughout here. Before I move on to option B, though, I'm going to pause and just ask if the committee has any questions about this specific layout.
So if I'm understanding, what's on the north side is railroad tracks?
Thank you, committee member, for bringing that up. My pardon, I forgot to mention the railroad tracks. So the developer is proposing a trail connection underneath the railroad tracks. No, the shaking. It would be, okay, surface, through that, so, thank you.
What was the answer? It would be what?
It's potentially going to be at the surface. There's a project.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt.
My name's Matt Pavick. So we are talking to the railroad about this. There's an existing farm crossing right in that location. So we were going to try to repurpose that as pedestrian crossing there. So we have a lot of work to do with the railroad to get that approved, but that's kind of the idea, to try to connect the neighborhoods if we can.
So when you say surface, like not above, like not like a
No, just right
raised-
at grade. Yeah.
Right at grade.
Yeah,
Okay,
right at
thank you
grade.
for clarifying.
Yep.
Thank you.
I have a question on the clubhouse pool area. It seems kind of small relative to the number of units. And maybe that isn't in our purview, but just curious.
Yeah, it is sized based on the builder's, typical sizing criteria for a project this size. It's real similar to the project just on the north side of the railroad tracks. It's a rental single-family project with about the same amount of units. So it is, has the amenities that would be typical for that size.
And for some feedback on is it Hunter's Ridge?
Brooke, Hunter's Brook.
Well, Marsh Hollow is the rental
Yeah.
one. Is that the one you're referring to?
Well, no, actually it's a different one, but,
Hunter's Brook is single family.
That's the next development north.
next development north.
Marsh Hollow is the one with the rental single-family. That's the same size as this one.
Yeah, okay, got it.
And it's
Thank you.
It's not quite finished being constructed yet, but it's about half done.
I would just make a couple of comments just before we go on to the other plan. But number one, I thought, great to see a dog park there. I went, oh, good, that's nice to see that. Hopefully, I don't know what the size of it was, but I'm guessing you've researched how big it needs to be for that much development. So that would be great. My concern is gonna be those railroad tracks with it grade level. I just hate to see little kids crossing street level across railroad tracks. So I don't know, it's just a concern. I don't know what the solution is, but that raises a red flag for me.
Does a sidewalk on 11 also cross at grade level?
Yep.
And I can empathize with your wanting to keep it where there's already a farm crossing, knowing how railroads can be and how difficult it can be to work with them. So I understand that. But I do think it's important to try to figure out a way to connect the two neighborhoods, especially as you head then through there further to the south it would be.
So I have I was looking specifically at the trails. So neighborhood trail connection that's marked as yellow. So you said it's like our normal trails. So are those then like serviced by the city of Victoria? But then the red is, I don't know how this works here, but in like usually it's homeowners who are responsible then for those like sidewalks that are in front of their house. But this would be the property then is responsible for the red.
Yeah, and Matt, please correct me if I'm wrong, but the city would maintain the trail connections, or at least we'd like to. And then the HOA or the homeowners association would take care of the sidewalk portions or the red arrows, more or less.
And so I was looking at similar developments nearby. So my question is, how come the park is not within this development? Because, for instance, like Madeline Creek has when I looked at it from an aerial map vantage point, it had a very similar layout to this option A with, I don't know what you call them, but the dead ends. And then Madeline Creek that development has a huge playground park area.
Yeah, and if you don't mind us holding on that question, I
Okay.
think we'll kind of address some of that in option B, and then we'll
Okay.
kind of get into it later in the discussion. I don't want it to deviate from going through option B.
Okay.
All right. Well, then we'll carry on. Thank you. So, to somewhat answer your question, to kind of move on to option B, I should note how we came to receive 2 sketch plat options. Like I said, this is pretty uncommon, but overall staff was not necessarily supportive of the first option that we were looking at, or the first scenario. As that anchor to the south growth area, staff expressed the desire to bring the look and the feel and everything that we hear from the community that brings people to Victoria and what they truly enjoy, the open spaces, the wetlands, the connecting nature into development, into growth that we know is going to happen, into these neighborhoods and into this area. So option B then presents itself a different road alignment. As you see, we kind of more or less create this loop area. We change the townhome look, but then we also have direct access to this public loop. And I'm going to pull up the trail map quickly just to showcase that. As now we're creating this natural walkway throughout the neighborhood, as well as this middle, I think we call it the green commons area, that goes through this to really preserve the open space, the green space, and be that natural community gathering space that we try and look for developments and community. From what we heard in the survey, from what we've heard from City Council, is that there's a desire to not necessarily have the 5-acre square park that has the same amenities as it does in almost every single one of our neighborhoods, and to be more creative with the other areas within our spaces, our outlots alongside of our trails, the other open spaces that we have. So in working with the developer and showcasing our vision to them and what we've heard from the community, they were able to come up with this design to really bring, what we hear from Victoria residents, what they like about Victoria, to this space. And then one of the questions that I'll pose to you, committee members, of option B is something that you enjoy and something that you'd like to see. What would you like to see for this common green space and some of the other open spaces in there? Would you like it to be public and owned and operated by the city? And then we can talk later about programming it. Do we want to look at doing some sort of fitness trail or natural log jumping spaces or whatever have you? Or is this something that we'd like to keep as HOA maintained and just preserve that natural open space? Because that's still something that we like and we enjoy. The other pieces along with this, just to showcase what we have in this option, is we still have that centrally located clubhouse. Within this, there are additional amenities that are being proposed, such as tot lots, playgrounds, dog parks, potential dog parks in this area, as well as pedestrian overlooks. Again, this future park is not considered, so take it off the table for both of these options. And I'll pull up the trail connections as well. Is there any questions or thoughts just based on option B? Matt, did I misspeak on any of those things, or anything you'd like to address related to this second option?
I think you addressed it really well. The idea here was, with the way we reconfigured the land, was to preserve that open space in the center, kind of having a center commons that we could really utilize with trails and kind of that passive places to walk your dog and walk with the kids, and have some green space to, play catch and those kinds of things that you don't really have in the more traditional setup with which was option A. And then we, added some different amenities at either end of the, some destinations, so you can walk to the, the pond on the north side. There's a bench and you can hang out there, or you can keep walking past all the way through the entire development, all the way to the west end where there's a dog park or some other amenity. So we wanted to focus on having a long way to walk, looping trails that can bring you all throughout the development.
I have a hard time conceptualizing how much space that green space is in the middle there. Maybe that's how my brain works, but between the townhomes to the south and the ones to the north where the trail runs through the middle, what are we talking? How many? Is it a football field, or is it a
So,
How much space is
so
that?
those units are about 50 feet deep. So
Okay.
you could imagine at the narrow end, it's probably about 50 feet across.
Okay,
And at the other end, it's probably, 400 or 500 feet
okay, that's
across,
helpful.
something like that.
Yeah, that's helpful.
So not 500, 300 or 400 probably.
Okay, yeah.
I'd also like to note, related to this potential option and to address Committee Member Cahill's question about related to why not put a 5-acre or something similar park here. One is staff, and listening to the community survey and city council, we felt like this option B was really a good substitute for that type of a park. But in addition, because of the high density residential requirements that we have for this parcel, having something as large as a 5-acre park would make this site specifically challenging because we do have to meet that density requirement.
One thing I would say as far as having the park or the park and rec, the city control or maintain or work on some of the space in here versus the HOA is I think if you split it up, that's gonna lead to issues where the HOA is mowing on a Tuesday and the city comes out on Friday. And I think it aesthetically and just kind of activity wise, it doesn't make a lot of sense for the city to shoehorn themselves into a small space within a development. If the developer and the HOA ultimately is gonna take care of it. I don't think it makes sense to have too many cooks in the kitchen there, with the city coming and maintaining a small space or something.
Well noted. Sorry.
Could I ask, where is the nearest park, city park?
Let's jump right to that slide, Jeanette. And I do have to thank Chair Larson to bringing that up when we talked this morning. I think that was a great addition to this presentation. That was one of the questions she asked this morning is, what are neighboring parks? So when we're looking at what we have close by, we have 2 developments that currently have parkland that's going to be dedicated to the city. There is nothing currently built in those areas. So just keep that in the back of your mind that we're not looking at grown parks, developed parks, we're looking at vacant lots of land. But the first one is Hunters Brook Park Development, which is about a 5.5-acre park. That's about a 0.4 mile walk from this site, or roughly from the entering of this site, depending on where you are in the neighborhood. And then the Brookmore Park Development, which is the development directly north, that's another 5-acre park. And it really depends on that railroad connection. If the railroad connection exists, it's about a 0.3 mile walk. And then if it does not exist, it's about a 0.7 mile walk, just to put that in perspective. And how about I just pull up the GIS too, just so we're looking at a visual rather than me babbling. So we're looking at this parcel here. And when we're talking about the Brookmore development, it's going to be this section here, and the park is located right in this space. So if you are walking, you'd either take the railroad route and directly connect into the neighborhood, kind of in this area, or you'd have to walk around through the development to be able to get to that space. For the Hunters Brook, you would go straight north off of the County Road 11 connection, and the Hunters Brook Park is this parcel right here. And yes, we will be discussing this as a committee on both these items. They are in the CIP. Great question. So more or less talking about the CIP a bit, parkland dedication. So option A and option B are really similar when it comes to parkland dedication or cash in lieu of. So option A, we're looking at 6.24 acres of parkland dedication or cash in lieu of land, which is about 655,000. Like I said, option B is very similar. We're looking at 6.45 acres with cash in lieu of land being 677. We'll probably do a mix, just depending on where we come from. Related to trails and some of those parkland conversations that we've kind of briefly had, but I think the committee could have more conversation related to who's going to own some of those central areas. But this is more or less what we're looking at. And then again, I just want to harp again that future park, that Ghost Plat Park is not included in this calculation.
That's helpful, because I kept looking at that going, why was that over there? And yeah, makes sense.
Next to the commercial area, yeah.
So can you speak to more for both options, when I was reading the materials, there was staff concerns in both options. So what, because it did relate to some sidewalks, which we know is near and dear to everyone's heart in this committee. So just wanted to know, like, if those are staff concerns and they're already being brought forward, what then are you looking to hear from us?
Yeah, and specifically the concern I think you're speaking of is related to option B. As part of this space, because we were able to add those extra trail connections and do that commons green space, we lost the double sidewalk on the public access road. So as we saw in option A, you're gonna see sidewalk on both ends of these streets. With option B, we have limited the sidewalk to one of those. And that's
Do you have
something,
a photo of them side by side?
don't, but I'm sure I could try and do that.
Is that a sidewalks on both sides of high density? Is that a city code?
It
So
is.
that would require a variance for this development?
It would include a PUD deviation, yes. And that's part of the sketch plat process as well, is hearing what staff's concern are, figuring out and balancing where the concerns and priorities lie, and just really determining, is a sidewalk connection our largest priority, or is it the green space, or is it one versus the other, and just trying to make a space work, because obviously we're dealing with plots of land that have weird shapes like a triangle, but also have wetlands and a bunch of other things that make it more complex than just putting a block square house or townhome on a lot. So I'm gonna see if I can try and do what you're asking.
So I know at home I kept scrolling back and forth to see what those things were addressing, what those comments were addressing.
It's not great. It's not that close, but
I would be an advocate for more green space and less sidewalk, personally. My neighborhood has sidewalks on one side of the road and it's fine. It's great, actually, because it's on the other side of the road and I don't have to shovel it. It's ideal in my situation. But I think the more green space you can have, and especially as you get into higher density,
Yeah.
the better.
I was thinking the same thing. If you're in here, and correct me if I'm wrong, but these are all rentals, right? The townhouses and the apartments. That's the current plan. So, if you're in a high-density area, you're gonna have small yards in those townhouses, if anything. So to have some green space to go with your dog or go with your kids or whatever, meet people, I think would be an attractive area if I was renting. Yeah. The one concern I have about green space, or one clarifying question I have about green space is, are we talking about sod, 100% sod, or are we talking about some native grasses, or I'm just thinking about, all this mowing, or could there be some kind of combination of some native grasses and stuff where you're not just mowing this whole 5-acre area or
that's a two-part question. Obviously, this is feedback to provide to the developer because they're going to be maintaining a good chunk of this through the HOA. But if there are any areas that are wanting to be public and preserved for the public works and for the city to maintain, that gives us more leeway on how we seed it, what we want to do with it on maintenance, and more of those type of things.
Yeah, I would just add that we're open to anything on that. I think, generally speaking, the center green probably wants to be programmed to be a little bit more usable, but all the peripheral things and the trails and the natural areas by the ponds, that's a great spot for native seeding and pollinator-friendly, plantings and those kinds of things, just to enhance that looping trail kind of experience that you would have there on those ends.
I would agree that I am favoring option B as well. I think the green space is
would provide a lot into a highly densely populated area. I think I'm leaning towards not having that be in a city programmed area. I don't know, I'm not sure what we would do there. And maybe I'm just not envisioning that, or, but I'm open to other thoughts.
I would agree with you if the HOA can maintain and have it be cohesive within the development, do that. Obviously allowing for the trail connections and things like that to make sure those are done correctly, but I would agree.
I would agree with Mary and Greg as well.
I have a question about the ponds on either end, or is that a natural wetland, or is this a pond that you're creating, or?
The two blue dots are ponds that we're constructing for the project.
Okay.
To the west of the western pond, there's kind of a light green triangle, that's wetland.
Okay. And you know what the depth of that will be, or proposed, or? Where I'm going is this just safety with little kids walking around water, falling in a pond, just?
Can you skate on it?
Yeah, so they're,
That's what I'm thinking.
so they're gonna be, a combination of, there'll be some infiltration benches along them to meet the Carver County requirements for water quality. Then there'll be standing water in the majority of the area, and they are designed with a safety bench for the first 10 feet that is underwater. It's really flat, so it only gets to a foot deep for 10 feet. So that's a safety bench that's designed into any pond like that.
Okay.
So they are designed kind of for safety with that in mind.
Yeah, I would be supportive more of option B with the green space, as you mentioned, with the density, having some room to breathe and do some other things outside, I think would be really important. My only concern is like, A or B is that railroad crossing at grade level. That's,
Well, so are the proposed dogs parks, tot lots, and playground, are those set amenities? So like if we say this is HOA maintained and they go back and none of those amenities come in, then, and we say, okay, we don't want park space, are we potentially leaving residents with zero playgrounds?
I think what we're proposing are ideas. So if the city, we just wanted to put things out there that can fit in the space that people will probably want. So whether they become a privately owned playground or a city-owned playground is kind of what we would like to know from you. If it makes more sense, if they're gonna be public to anybody in the city versus just to be used by these residents, I think is an important point. If your thoughts are that.
Can I ask for
Anybody can
clarification on that? So
Sure.
if there's an option B, you show like on the, I don't know, as I'm looking at it, the right side, there's kind of a tot lot there and things, or a playground. If I'm to wander into the neighborhood and use the playground, I'm just really kicking you off of it, right?
Right.
You're not talking about, the pool would be a keyed entry system, but the playgrounds are still open to the general public, right? Even though.
I would think, yes,
would be-
technically. I mean,
Right.
yeah, there'd be on private property would be kind of the sticking point. So I don't think it's an issue, but
And
that would be the clarification, I think.
we've had examples of both within our community.
I was gonna ask that, like if you, off Highway 5, there's a basketball court and there's a central, is that development owned or public?
Those are public. A majority of recreational equipment, play equipment, is owned by the city. That has been our historical take. That being said, that isn't always the case. Laketown has a private park that they have kind of in a cul-de-sac area. Zumbridge Ridge has a private park. Savannah Valley used to be a private park, but through partnership, the city took that over as a public park. Trying to think if there's any more. There's a few in newer developments that they've chosen to do more of the private park amenities rather than the public park amenities. Most of the time, people don't distinguish between the difference. However, there is a sense of ownership in the neighborhood if it is an HOA-run facility. So sometimes you do run into some of that ownership level issues. Just something to be aware of. As city staff, I think we're open to any of these. It just really depends on where the committee would rather have us take our priorities when it comes to these spaces. We would obviously have more ownership of creating dog parks or having timelines set on those. Obviously, it would come to the cost of us, but at least we have the control over it. The other piece to consider is obviously we're dealing with then some parking questions as well, like making sure that similar to what we're looking at as a Savannah Valley or some of those small neighborhood parks, we wouldn't necessarily be looking at including parking. It would be really built for that neighborhood, but a public amenity.
And I mean, I believe that you're trying to attract renters, so you're gonna want these amenities, right, to attract the renters either way. So it's advantageous to the developer to put the parks in if they want families to rent rent the units.
The other pieces I want to note is it's not an all for nothing. It can be a mix and match. If there's areas that we would rather preserve, like the pedestrian overlooks amongst the ponds and the wetlands, that could be something we take on. Or if there's a single space like this space over here that we would like to take on, knowing that it might be more advantageous to do educational signage and whatever have you to that space, we could take that on and leave the rest, or vice versa, any of the locations.
Looks like a nice development.
Yeah.
I think it'll be a good addition. And if the ponds can be skated on in the winter, even better. If we have ice, and if,
Great.
we do now, but. a little
Yeah.
delayed.
I mean, I would just want to say that if we don't take on any programming or any land as the city, that these amenities, some amenities development-wise come to fruition. Like, I would just hate for this whole development to go up and there be not a single playground, and then we have someone coming back to our committee saying, how did you put 144 units of apartment in here and this many townhomes and not have a single like playground type amenity, right? So I don't know, I don't know our purview in that, but I'm just looking ahead.
Alyssa, do we have a standard, does the city have a standard of like every resident should be within X miles of a park? I just know when I lived in Eden Prairie, it was like they wanted every resident to be within a half a mile of a park kind of thing, or something like that. And that was like their goal. And we have something like that where it's kind of our guideline.
We do. It's listed in our 2040 comprehensive plan. There's a whole chapter on parks and open spaces, and on there is a goal for the city to have a 1 mile walking radius for residents to be able to access a park. So obviously, the list I had before you, we're within those limits, just with the two major parks that are north. And then the one I failed to mention, that's the last bullet point on this item, is anything in the future commercial area. City Council hasn't set what that space will eventually look like. They haven't set a vision for what that space is. But from what we know, they obviously want it to still include all the natural amenities that we're finding in our residential spaces. So urban parks, central green spaces, natural walking areas is something that they're gonna make sure that we're highlighting in this space. So those are other opportunities for these residents, this potential development to be able to access on the south side. But to answer your question more directly in a less roundabout way, 1 mile. Yeah.
Oh, one thing I would add to that is both of those parks have large parking lots as well as part of their design, so people can drive a minute to get to those as well. So all right, thank you for your feedback. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll keep working with staff on getting it programmed and designed. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Are we up to, is there any other conversation?
Yeah, do we touch on all those questions, Alyssa?
I think we did. Maybe not in a more direct way, but in a roundabout way. I think we've answered everything that staff was looking for. Of course, if you do have anything else, if there's more discussion, please feel free to continue.
I did one last question. What is your target demographic for this development? Are you looking for,
It's everybody.
okay,
Yep, it's all across the board. There's gonna be anything from, young families, starter families, empty nesters. Yep, it's all across the board. The unit types are 2, 3, 4 bedroom. So it could be any family.
okay, thank you. All right, nothing further on this one? Okay, then there is no other business. It looks like we can adjourn. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I move to adjourn the meeting.
Have a second?
Second.
Motion by Jeanette and a second by Terry to adjourn the meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
I
Opposed? Meeting is adjourned.